about it. I bought this 1994 BMW 325 IS E36, and I'm in the process of cloning it and making it into an M3. I found this car abandoned. It was very affordable. I bought it for $1,500, running, driving, hadn't been driven in 2 years. And to be honest, the process has been very difficult up to this point because this car needs a lot of love. It's got a lot of dirt, it's got some rust, it's got bad repairs from the previous owner. So my job is to take it from the ground up and make it into the M3 that it always wanted to be. I've bought and sold multiple vehicles in the past. Usually I'll start out with a ground up restoration where these cars are castaways, they're no longer valued by anyone or their owners, and I bring them back to life, and then typically, sometimes I'll keep them, but usually I'll sell them. But I've always wanted to do an E36. I've never done a European vehicle, and after doing so much research, I came across this 1994 325 IS. If you haven't watched the previous videos on this build series, this is video number 5, where I've been documenting and showcasing my progress along the way. And there's a lot more videos to come, and I would definitely recommend staying to the end because I'm going to show kind of a major step that's upcoming in this build that I think is going to be a little bit different and hasn't been done the same way as everyone else does. But for now, I'm tackling a major step in this build, and that is addressing the elephant in the room. This car came automatic, it's slow, it doesn't shift great, and honestly, it can't hold a lot of power. And so in today's video, we're going to be swapping out the automatic transmission, putting in a ZF 5-speed out of a 1988 328i, which I believe is the same transmission as the M3 from what I understand. But the ZF is rated for about 500 to 600 horsepower, and that's definitely in line with the power goals we're looking for in this build. This ZF 5-speed is going to be the solution to the automatic issues we have. And so all of the parts that you see on this table are going to be responsible for converting this vehicle over to a manual transmission. A few things that to note, I'm going to be reusing the clutch and the flywheel that came with this transmission for now. But there's a reason why I'm reusing the old clutch and flywheel, because as I said, wait till the end of the video and I'm going to show you why I'm going to be reusing it temporarily for now. And then I got this Garagistic shifter second hand. I don't like how long it is, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up cutting a section out of it and making it shorter to be a little bit more realistic. And so with that being said, let's get the car up in the air, start taking off some parts, and start swapping in this transmission. Oh, and side note, Hi-Chews are the supreme A1 candy. Let me know down in the comments, what's your candy of choice? For me, it's Hi-Chews. So I've already started removing the screws up here around this bezel here, but there are multiple screws under there, but it looks like I'm gonna have to take this whole center section out in order to be able to get to 2 screws here. Looks like I'm gonna have to pull 2 screws here, and then that should free up this section, and then we'll see what's under there. This is the most difficult trim piece that I've ever had to take off. Like these 2 screws up here were tucked in behind these metal braces, and it looks like the previous owner had already broken these 2 off, but I think that's fine. I can get new screws on there and get that tightened down. But otherwise, trim piece came out successfully. This is a 30-year-old piece of trim. That's insane. All right, so shifter is out, That took way longer than it needed to, honestly. That's probably the longest shifter uninstall I've ever dealt with. Shifter's out, transmission sodded. So now I'm gonna get the car in the air and start taking stuff off from underneath. It wouldn't really be a BMW if it didn't leak oil, would it? All right, so we're up in the air. So plan of attack, stare at all the oil leaks for one. So now that I'm under the car, I'm gonna get the exhaust off, I'm gonna get the drive shaft off. Anything that's underneath here that can get in the way of the transmission coming out. And one thing I like to do is when I remove bolts from things and then I remove the part, I put the bolts back into the holes where they came from, just so I know, in case I forget or it's another day, just so I know where everything goes. All right, exhaust is out. Looks like a few bolts up here at the front, at the tail shaft of the transmission, and then 4 nuts here at the rear end. So look like a carrier bushing right there as well that I'll take off along with this brace. So I'm making good progress. The exhaust is out, the drive shaft's out. Next thing I need to do is drain the transmission fluid. I need to pull the transmission cooler lines out of the radiator. And then I need to remove, there's a couple of shields I need to remove. And then from there, I should have good access to the transmission. And then my plan of attack is I'll tilt the engine backward so I can clear the belt housing bolts, and then that'll be the next step. Let's get it. Next thing here are these are the transmission lines. They connect into the transmission, but then they go forward and bolt right here. So they come to the front and then they bolt right there. So we'll undo this connection, and then I should be able to get these lines out without too much trouble. If not, I'll just cut them because I don't need them. Oh, nice. The trans mount was completely broken, wasn't even connected to the transmission. So right now, pretty much everything is removed under the car. The only thing that's left, I think is gonna be an issue, is the starter. Something I was reading is that on these early M50 engines, I may have to remove the intake manifold to get to the starter just because of the way the starter bolts are aligned. So I'm gonna get the car lower down and then take a look from the top and then see. Hopefully I won't have to take it off. So I've got the intake manifold out of the way now, but now that it's out of the way, I see what people are saying. It would have been literally impossible to get that bolt out. This is the bolt right here that's way tucked in. There's no way I was going to be able to get that from underneath or from anywhere, any other angle except underneath the intake manifold. So one bolt there, and then the other one is somewhere underneath that thing. So I'm gonna get that starter out and then we'll keep it moving. I think actually for tonight, the starter may be the last thing. It's been a long evening and I'm gonna get some rest and then come back the next day and be refreshed and continue with the transmission swap. So I've pretty much all the bolts out of the bell housing. The main one that I'm worried about is at the top of the bell housing here, this guy right here. I'm gonna have to get a long extension and get him out, but should be easy work. Not too bad so far. So that is a wrap for day one. Aside from making a giant mess, the transmission's out, and it went out pretty smoothly. I think there are some things that I had to learn along the way because I have never worked on one of these cars before. But overall, pretty easy cars to work on. So I'm gonna get back tomorrow. I'm gonna install the new 5-speed ZF transmission, and then we're gonna finish up the swap and hopefully be running and driving here in a few hours. See you guys tomorrow.
Several days later.
So as you can see, the clutch and flywheel are on. And you may be wondering, why did I reuse the old clutch and flywheel setup? The old clutch was in decent shape. It wasn't great, but to be honest, this was done on purpose because in the future, I have a major change to this project that's going to involve the clutch and flywheel. And so for now, I went ahead and reused the old clutch and flywheel setup as just a temporary solution. The reason why I did that is because I need the car mobile so that when it goes to paint and body, that the paint shop is able to move it and not have any issues of having to push it around. And so just as a temporary solution, again, that was the reason why I reused the old parts. This is also a complete side note, but as I was just filming that clip, I noticed this lower control arm doesn't look to be quite straight. If you look at this one, it looks straight. This one is crooked. Those have been some of the challenges I've been dealing with on this car, but as I said from the beginning, this car was cheap and affordable, and issues like these are going to be expected as I continue to replace parts and upgrade things. So for now, the plan of attack is to get the transmission on, get everything bolted up, get the drive shaft on and everything bolted up, and that will be our next steps for now. So in typical fashion, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So the transmission went in super easy, and honestly, I'm not sure how it did because I didn't even use a clutch alignment tool on the clutch disc. All I did was eyeball it and hope for the best, and I got lucky. But it went in super easy, but then what I realized is that it wouldn't fully mate up to the transmission, and this is an issue that I think all of us has probably dealt with before when you're doing a transmission swap, is the dowel pins. So I have 2 male dowel pins, one on the engine side and one on the transmission side, not allowing the transmission to sit all the way in place. As you can see there, that's 1 dowel pin, and on the other side, there's the other dowel pin. So I pulled the transmission back a little bit, and I'm going to get that removed and then reinstalled again, and all should be well after that. All right, here we go. Oh, it's so easy. That's insane. I've never had a transmission going that easy. All right, looks like we're in, and I can feed the rest in with the bolts and get it drawn all the way up. So one of the things that I'm doing is I ended up, so on the OBD1 starters, it uses a bolt. And so it sandwiches in between the engine and the transmission. And so there are no threads on the starter itself to essentially put a bolt in. It's a bolt and then a nut, then clamps it together. Well, the newer starters, the OBD2 starters, have threads in them. And so I actually had an OBD2 starter. And so what I'm doing is I'm swapping that starter in. So in the future, if I ever have any starter issues, I won't have to pull the intake manifold. I can just do it from underneath the car. Because in order to get that bolt for the OBD1 starter, I have to pull the intake manifold, get to the backside, and put a wrench on the end underneath the intake manifold, versus now I can just do it from the transmission tunnel. And so, upgrades. And that is a wrap for today. I didn't have a lot of time today, but I did get a lot done, I feel like. Got the transmission in place, everything bolted up, starter's in, drive shaft is in. The only thing underneath that I still need to install is the exhaust and then the cross member. And otherwise, I think a couple of small shields, and everything underneath is good to go. So I think for tomorrow, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna install the intake manifold, get everything routed there. I do think that there are some wiring changes I have to do because this car was originally an automatic chassis and now it is manual. I have to install the clutch pedal and that whole assembly and then install the shifter. And I think we're done after that. So this has been a pretty involved swap. It's gonna be a long video. So I appreciate you guys watching through, and I'll see you tomorrow. As you just saw, I went ahead and installed the clutch pedal, the brake pedal assembly. It went together pretty easy. I just had to make sure I had to clear all of this out of the way so that I could have access to all the bolts pretty easily. As you can see, it's in. 3 pedal gang. So now I need to wrap up the engine bay. I need to install the intake manifold, get all that buttoned up and ready to go. And then otherwise, I'm going to throw the car back on the lift and put the exhaust on and get the shifter set up and mark where I need to cut the shifter. As I referenced earlier in the video, the shifter is really long. It's a Garagistics shifter that I bought secondhand. What I'm gonna do is cut a section out of it and shorten it so that it's a little bit more realistic, because I'm not about that hot boy life. All right, engine bay is back together. Remember this engine because it may or may not be there in the next coming days. Final stretches on the 325IS M3 conversion, M3 clone. 5-speed manual swap, where I swapped the ZF transmission into the 325IS. I'm in the final stretches of this swap over. It's actually gone really well. I've just had to do it in sections, and so you see a lot of changes in clothing. This has been recorded over multiple days of working on the car, but we're in the final stretches. So right now, as you can see, transmission's in, slave cylinder's in as well up there, line is plumbed, and I do need to bleed the clutch still. So what I need to do now is swap the oil out of the transmission. I probably should have done that while the transmission was on the floor, but here we are. Swap the transmission fluid, and then I will install the exhaust. Unfortunately, it's just me here today. I don't have anyone to help me bleed the clutch, and so we're gonna get as far as we can, to the point where I just need to bleed the clutch and see if everything works. And as I'm getting to the conclusion of this 5-speed manual swap, I do want to reveal the engine that's gonna be going in the car. So this is a 2JZ GE out of I believe a 94 SC300, out of a Lexus SC300. I've done multiple JZ swaps in vehicles, and this one's gonna be no different. There's a wide range of parts available for the 2JZ platform, and many people have swapped this engine into the BMW chassis. And so That is the reason why I haven't swapped a lot of the gasketing and replaced a lot of seals and all that, because ultimately this engine is going to be going into the car. The final plan and goal for this car is going to be maybe a 500 to 550 horsepower fun weekend street car, and but in order to achieve that, I think the 2JZ is going to be much more fun, interesting, reliable. And who doesn't like a good 2JZ? So I bought this engine for $400 off of Facebook Marketplace. It does need a head gasket, so I'm going to be swapping over the head to the cylinder head over to a VVT-I head. I'll be able to have a cam sensor already built into the head. This engine originally came with a distributor, and from experience, it's very difficult to make the distributor work with an aftermarket ECU, and so a lot of times I will just add a Hall cam sensor and then add a crank sensor, because this engine didn't come with cam and crank sensors it came through the distributor. Otherwise, this engine's pretty much ready to go. Not sure on the mileage, but yeah, this is the new power plant on the car. And talking power, this is actually one of the reasons why I'm keeping the power a little bit limited on this build. It's really easy to make power on these 2JZs, but unfortunately, one of the issues on the E36 chassis is you can't really fit a large tire in the back. I think like a 255, maybe a 265 without going over fenders, and that's not something I really want to do in this build. And so I'm going to keep the power low just to keep it fun, reliable. Planning to have AC, everything working, heat, AC, and so that'll be an interesting challenge. But otherwise, yeah, that is the plan for the engine. I'm really excited to get this in. I've already started ordering some parts for it, engine mounts. I do need to order the transmission adapter plate next, and that was the main reason why I swapped over to the ZF transmission, because I know it can handle the power. But otherwise, I'm going to get the exhaust on, and then I will wrap up what I can today, and then hopefully get things started, and I can at least check for any leaks or anything like that. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait until I can get some help to bleed the clutch. Get some oil in this thing, and then that should be wrapped up that should wrap up everything under the hood, and then the only thing I'll need to do is just still bleed the clutch. And that is pretty much a wrap on the 5-speed conversion on my E36. I have the shifter in place. I got it shortened down, TIG welded. Huge thanks to my buddy Smiley at Smiley AutoWorks, who did the welding for me. The shifter's in place. I currently don't have all the plastics in place, obviously, but that'll come later. I do still need to wire in the neutral safety switch permanently. This was just a temporary solution just to get the car running. But otherwise, yeah, the swap is pretty much done. Third pedal. So that took quite a few days to get it done, but I'm glad this project is over. This one step closer to the final finished product. Next big phase of the project is going to be paint and bodywork. I've actually decided to go ahead and do the paint and bodywork myself. I've painted engine bays in the past before, so I'm familiar with the concept of painting and what all needs to be done, but I haven't done a car before. So you guys are going to be along for the ride with me as I figure this out. Overall, the car is actually in pretty good shape. There are some minor dents and dings as you would expect, but overall the car is really straight, which will be easy body filling and minor dent repair. I would say the biggest repair I'm gonna have to do is right here. This section here looks like it's dented in and there's some rust behind it, but not a big deal. I'll cut this section out and then get it replaced. As well as this side here, there's a dent right here that I'll need to probably either cut this section out or do a dent repair on it, but we'll see. Thankfully, I still kept this rear section that I had of an M3. As you can see, all this tail section here is in good shape. So what I'll do is I'll use this for parts and cut out whatever metal that I need, but otherwise, I'm glad I kept this. So with that being said, As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.